This happened about 3 years ago when I was working the closing shift at a grocery store in my hometown. I was 19 at the time, and this was my first real job outside of babysitting. The store closed at 11 p.m., and I usually stayed until midnight to help clean up and restock. On this particular Tuesday, it was just me and my manager closing. The last customer had left around 10:45, and we locked the doors right at 11. My manager went to count the registers while I started sweeping the aisles. The store had these really tall shelving units, and when it was empty and quiet like this, every little sound seemed to echo. I was sweeping aisle 7 when I heard something fall in the next aisle over. I stopped and called out, thinking maybe my manager had come back from the office. No response. I walked over aisle 8 and saw a can of soup rolling on the floor. That's when I noticed all the security cameras were pointing down at weird angles, like someone had adjusted them. I immediately got the sick feeling in my stomach. I grabbed my phone and started walking toward the front, glancing back over my shoulder every few seconds. That's when I saw him, a man crouched between the shelves on the bottom row, just watching me through the gap. His eyes were wide and unblinking. I screamed and ran to the office. My manager called the police immediately. Apparently, the guy had been hiding in the store since before we closed, waiting. The police found him in the storage room. He had a backpack full of zip ties and duct tape. I quit that job the next week and still have nightmares about those eyes staring at me through the shelves. I'm a single mom of 2, and grocery shopping is usually just a mundane part of my weekly routine. But last winter, something happened that made me completely change how I approach it. It was around 8 p.m. on a Friday evening. My kids were with their dad for the weekend, so I decided to do a big shopping trip without having to wrangle them through the store. I parked near the back of the lot, since it wasn't too busy and I didn't mind the walk. Shopping took me about 45 minutes, and when I came out, the parking lot was much emptier. As I was loading my bags into the trunk, I noticed a van had parked right next to my car on the driver's side, even though there were plenty of other spots available. The van's side door was open, facing my car. Something felt wrong. I've heard stories about this tactic being used to grab people. Instead of getting in my car, I left my cart right there and walked straight back into the store. I found a security guard and explained the situation. He walked out with me. When we got in my car, the van was still there with the door open. The security guard approached it while I stayed back. He looked inside and his whole demeanor changed. He immediately called the police and told me to wait inside the store. Later, the police told me they found restraints inside the van and that the owner had a history of violent offenses. If I had just gotten in my car without thinking, I don't know what would have happened. Now I always check my surroundings and trust my gut feeling, no matter what. About 6 months ago, I started noticing the same person everywhere I went grocery shopping. At first, I thought it was just coincidence. Same neighborhood, similar schedules, whatever. But then it became impossible to ignore. I'm a 28-year-old woman, and I typically shop at the same store every Sunday morning around 10 a.m. I started seeing this guy every single time. He'd be in whatever aisle I was in, always keeping a bit of distance, but clearly watching me. He never had a cart or basket, just wandered around. One Sunday, I decided to test it. I went to the store on a Thursday afternoon instead, completely changing my routine. He was there. I left without buying anything and came back on Saturday evening. He was there again. This went on for about 3 weeks. I reported it to the store manager, who said they'd keep an eye out, but I never felt like they took it seriously enough. Then one day, I got to my car after shopping and found a note under my windshield wiper. It said, "You look beautiful today," with a heart drawn on it. I called the police right there in the parking lot. They took a report, but said there wasn't much they could do since he hadn't technically threatened me. I felt so helpless. I started shopping at a completely different store across town, even though it was less convenient. For about 2 months, everything seemed fine. Then last month, I was at the new store and saw him again, standing at the end of an aisle, smiling at me. I immediately went to customer service and demanded they call the police. This time, an officer came and actually talked to him. Apparently, he claimed he didn't even recognize me and was just doing his shopping. I don't go grocery shopping alone anymore. I always bring my boyfriend or friend. It's frustrating that I had to completely change my life because of this creep, but I'd rather be safe than sorry. I used to work in the frozen food section of a large supermarket chain. This was back when I was in college, probably about 8 years ago. Part of my job was to go into the walk-in freezer in the back to restock items. The freezer was huge, probably about 20 feet by 30 feet, and the door was one of those heavy industrial ones that you had to really pull to open. There was a safety release on the inside in case you got locked in, but everyone joked about it never working properly. One evening, I was sent to the back to get a few cases of frozen vegetables. The closing manager was the only other person working in the back area that night. I went into the freezer and started looking for what I needed. I was in there for maybe 2 minutes when the lights suddenly went out. I'm not great in the dark to begin with, but being in a pitch-black freezer is absolutely terrifying. I fumbled for my phone to use as a flashlight, but my hands were already getting stiff from the cold. I made my way to where I thought the door was and pushed the safety release. Nothing happened. I pushed it again, harder, still nothing. I started pounding on the door and yelling for help, but the freezer was insulated and soundproof. My phone showed it was 7:43 p.m. I knew the store closed at 10, and I started panicking that I'd be stuck in there all night. The cold was becoming unbearable. I couldn't stop shaking, and my fingers were going numb. I kept pounding on the door and screaming, even though I knew no one could hear me. Then I heard something that made my blood run even colder. Footsteps outside the freezer door. I screamed for help, pounding harder. The footsteps stopped right outside. I could see a shadow moving under the door, where a tiny bit of light came through. Someone was standing there, but they weren't opening the door. I begged them to help me, telling them I was trapped. The shadow stayed there for what felt like forever, maybe 30 seconds, then walked away. I was in complete shock. Someone knew I was in there and left me. I eventually managed to use a metal shelf to pry open the door after about 15 more minutes of being trapped. When I stumbled out, half frozen and terrified, I found my manager in the office. I told him what happened, expecting him to be concerned. Instead, he seemed annoyed that I damaged the door. I quit the next day. Later, I found out from a former coworker that the cameras showed another employee, someone I'd rejected when he asked me out a few weeks prior, had deliberately shut off the freezer lights and jammed the door. He was fired and charged with assault, but knowing someone I work with try to hurt me like that still haunts me. This story isn't about something that happened to me, but something I witnessed that I'll never forget. I was shopping one afternoon at my local grocery store when I heard an announcement over the intercom asking for security to come to the front immediately. I was near the front, so I saw what happened next. A woman was crying hysterically. saying her 5-year-old daughter had vanished. She said she'd only looked away for a second while comparing prices, and when she turned back, her daughter was gone. That had been 10 minutes ago. The store went into lockdown mode. They blocked all exits and had employees stationed at each door. Police arrived within minutes. Everyone in the store was asked to stop what they were doing and help look for this little girl in a pink dress. I helped search the aisles, looking under shelves and behind displays. Other customers were doing the same. The mother's screams were getting more desperate. 20 minutes passed, then 30. This little girl had completely disappeared inside the store. Then someone found her inside a shopping cart that was in the storage room, covered with employee jackets and vests. She was unconscious. They later found out she'd been drugged with something that made her sleepy. A man had apparently grabbed her, given her something to make her calm, hidden her in the cart, and was planning to wheel her out during the chaos as if she were merchandise. Security footage showed him putting the jackets over her and pushing the cart toward the back. When the lockdown was announced, he panicked and abandoned the cart in the storage room before trying to leave through the front. He was arrested immediately. The little girl recovered, but that mother's screams still echo in my head. I have a daughter now, and I'm paranoid every single time we go shopping. I never let her out of my sight, not even for a second. About a year ago, I had a really unsettling experience at a warehouse club store. I had my membership there and went probably twice a month to stock up on bulk items. On this particular visit, I was looking for a specific brand of coffee that I usually bought. I couldn't find it in its normal spot, so I looked around for an employee to ask. I saw someone wearing a store vest in the next aisle and walked over. He was a younger guy, maybe mid-20s, with the standard uniform on. I asked him about the coffee, and he said he'd show me where it was. He started walking toward the back of the store, and I followed him. We walked past the normal coffee aisle, which seemed weird, and he kept going toward the storage area. I stopped and asked why we were going back there. He turned around with this really strange smile and said the coffee I wanted was in the warehouse section. Something about his expression made me uncomfortable. I told him I'd just find it myself and turned to walk away. He called after me, saying, "Are you sure? I really think you should come with me." There was something off about his tone, almost threatening. I walked quickly back toward the main shopping area, where there were more people. I found a female employee and mentioned that a guy in the back had acted strangely. I described him, and her face went pale. She immediately called security. Turns out, no one matching that description worked at the store. The vest he was wearing had been stolen from an employee locker room a few days earlier. Security checked the cameras and found him leading another woman toward the storage area earlier that same day. She had apparently also gotten a bad feeling and turned back. The police were called, and they found him still in the store, hiding in a bathroom. I have no idea what would have happened if I'd followed him into that back area, but I'm grateful I listened to my instincts. Now, whenever someone offers to help me in a store, I make sure they're actually an employee by checking with customer service first. This happened when I was working as an overnight stalker at a 24-hour grocery store. It was the summer after my freshman year of college, and I needed the money. The overnight shift paid better, and I liked that the store was mostly empty while we worked. Usually, there were about 4 or 5 of us on the overnight crew, plus a manager. We'd get deliveries around 1 or 2 a.m., and then we'd spend the rest of the shift stocking shelves and doing general maintenance. On this particular night, it was just me and one other stalker because people had called in sick. The manager was there too, but he stayed in the office most of the time. Around 2:30 a.m., we heard the delivery truck pull up to the back loading dock. My co-worker and I went to back to help unload. The delivery driver was someone we'd never seen before, which wasn't unusual. They rotated drivers a lot, but this guy seemed off from the start. He barely made eye contact and didn't say much as we started unloading pallets. About halfway through, I went to use the bathroom in the back area. When I came out, I noticed the delivery driver was no longer at the truck. My co-worker was bringing in another pallet by himself. I asked where the driver went, and he said he didn't know. The guy had just disappeared. We finished unloading and went to find him to have him sign the delivery paperwork. We checked the loading dock, the hallway, everywhere. He was gone, but his truck was still there, keys in the ignition, door open. We got the manager, who called the delivery company. They had no record of sending a driver to our store that night. We checked the truck and found that all the products were legitimate, but the truck itself had been reported stolen 3 days earlier from a facility 2 states away. The police came and found the driver hiding in the store's ceiling crawl space above the storage room. He'd apparently planned to hide up there until the store got busy in the morning, then blend in with customers and rob the safe while everyone was distracted. The creepiest part? They found a notebook in his jacket with notes about our store schedule, including which nights had the smallest crew. He'd been planning this for weeks and watching us. I'm a bargain shopper through and through, so I always check the clearance section whenever I go to the grocery store. My local store has a clearance aisle in the back corner where they put items that are close to expiration or have damaged packaging. A few months ago, I was browsing the clearance aisle on a weekday afternoon. The store was pretty quiet, and I was the only person in that section. I was bent down looking at some discounted canned goods on the bottom shelf when I heard footsteps behind me. I stood up and turned around, expecting to see another bargain hunter. Instead, there was a man standing at the end of the aisle just staring at me. He didn't have a cart or basket, and he wasn't looking at products, just directly at me. I gave him a polite smile and turned back to shopping, but I felt incredibly uncomfortable. I could still sense him standing there. After about 30 seconds, I glanced back, and he was closer. He'd moved about 10 feet down the aisle toward me without making a sound. My heart started pounding. I grabbed my cart and quickly moved to leave the aisle, but he sidestepped to block my way. I said, "Excuse me," firmly, but he didn't move. He just kept staring with this blank expression. I was starting to panic. The aisle had only one way out, and he was blocking it. I looked around for something I could use to defend myself, if needed. That's when I decided to scream as loud as I could. "Help! Someone help me!" The man's eyes went wide, and he immediately moved aside. I pushed my cart past him as fast as I could and practically ran to the front of the store. I found a manager and told him what happened. He called security, and they found the man still in the back of the store, hiding in the restroom. Apparently, he'd been banned from 3 other grocery stores in the area for similar behavior, cornering women in secluded aisles and refusing to let them leave. He wasn't arrested because technically he hadn't touched me or threatened me verbally, but he was banned from our store too. Now I only shop during busy times, and I never go down empty aisles alone. If I see someone acting strangely, I immediately find an employee or go where there are more people. That blank stare still gives me chills when I think about it. This is something that happened to my friend Sarah, but she asked me to share it because she's still too freaked out to talk about it in detail. Sarah ordered groceries online for delivery, which she did pretty regularly. She lived alone in a small apartment and had a busy work schedule, so delivery was convenient for her. One evening, she got a notification that her groceries had been delivered. She went down the lobby of her building to pick them up, but there was nothing there. She checked with the front desk. No delivery had come. Confused, she called the grocery store. The store confirmed the delivery had been completed and even had a photo of the bags on a doorstep. But it wasn't Sarah's doorstep. She didn't recognize the door or the surroundings in the photo at all. The driver had delivered to the wrong address. The store apologized and said they'd send a replacement order right away. Sarah went back up to her apartment. About 20 minutes later, there was a knock on her door. She looked through the peephole and saw a delivery person with grocery bags. She opened the door, but something felt wrong immediately. The person wasn't wearing a uniform from the grocery store she'd ordered from. When she asked about it, he said he was a substitute driver. He insisted on bringing the bags inside for her. Sarah said that was okay. She'd take them from there. But he kept insisting, saying he needed to make sure everything was there according to the receipt. He was getting pushy about it, actually moving forward like he was going to come in anyway. Sarah slammed the door in his face and immediately called 911. She told them someone was trying to force their way into her apartment, claiming to be a delivery driver. The man knocked again, yelling through the door, but Sarah didn't answer. The police arrived within 10 minutes. The delivery driver was still in the hallway. Turns out he didn't work for any grocery delivery service at all. He had somehow intercepted the photo of Sarah's first delivery being left at the wrong address, figured out where she actually lived, and showed up pretending to bring a replacement order with empty bags. The police found a weapon in his backpack. Sarah doesn't order delivery anymore. She goes to the store in person now, and she always has someone with her. The scariest part is that if she'd let him inside her apartment, no one would have known he wasn't a legitimate delivery person until it was too late. When I was in my early 20s, I worked as a cashier at a grocery store chain. I usually worked evening shifts that went until closing at 10 p.m. After we closed, I'd spend about 30 minutes cleaning my register area and doing last-minute tasks before I could leave. One night, I was the last cashier remaining after closing. Everyone else had already finished and left. The closing manager was somewhere in the store doing a final walkthrough. I was wiping down my register when I heard the intercom click on. A voice came through the speakers saying, "Attention shoppers, we are now closed. Please make your way to the exits." But the voice wasn't our manager's. It was deeper, more distorted, almost like someone was disguising it. I froze. The announcement continued. "All employees should know that I'm watching. I can see you." Then it clicked off. My hand was shaking as I grabbed my phone and called the manager. No answer. I called again. Nothing. I was starting to panic. I looked around the empty store, suddenly aware of how alone I was. The light seemed too bright, and every shadow looked threatening. I decided I needed to get out immediately. I grabbed my purse and started speed walking toward the front exit. As I passed the customer service desk, the phone started ringing. Without thinking, I picked it up. "Hello," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Heavy breathing on the other end. Then that same distorted voice. "Why are you leaving?" "Stay and keep me company." I dropped the phone and ran. I didn't stop until I reached my car in the parking lot. I locked all the doors and called 911, telling them someone was in the store, making threats over the intercom and phone. Police cars arrived quickly and searched the entire building. They found my manager unconscious in the break room, He'd been hit over the head and tied to a chair. In the manager's office, they found someone had been using the intercom system and security cameras to watch us. They eventually caught the guy hiding in the ceiling above the deli section. He was a former employee who'd been fired 6 months earlier and apparently had been planning this revenge for a while. He'd made copies of keys and had been coming into the store after hours for weeks, learning the routine. My manager recovered, but I quit immediately. I couldn't handle the thought of working in that store again, knowing someone had been watching us all along and we had no idea.